Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Broker to Broker Real Estate Podcast. Today, we have a very special episode for me specifically. I'm really excited about the guest that we have on today because she is very, very near and dear to my heart, and I cannot wait to introduce you to her. Welcome to the Broker to Broker Real Estate Podcast, where we have real, raw conversations with industry leaders, finding out how to connect, support, lead, and ultimately make an impact and drive results in the lives of your agents. I'm your host, Nathan Daniel, and welcome to the show. Welcome to the show, Denise Ackerman. Denise, I am so thrilled to have you on the show today.
Well, thanks, Nathan, and I am thrilled to be here. It's exciting to be sharing the platform, the stage with you after all of the things that you and I've gone through and experienced together.
It's exciting for me. And so if you're tuning in and you're listening to this, let me give you a little bit of backstory. So Denise, the Savvy Ageless Goddess Coach, as she's now known, she was one of my first real estate coaches. And Denise has seen the ups of my business. She's seen the downs of my business. She's seen the good. She's seen the bad. And I thought it was appropriate to not only bring her on and have a real conversation. Y'all know I like to keep it real, but have a real conversation about some of my journey, but also share some of her journey and hear all about what she's doing. So Denise, are you ready to get started?
Let's do it.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right. So let's go all the way back, right? All the way back to, what was it? 2012. 12. It was 2012. And you had joined an office that I was a part of.
Right.
And we had some pre-conversations, and I was kind of savvy that you were coming in, and I was pretty excited because I was like, hey, awesome. We've got a great vibe going on. I know I need a coach. And so I if I remember right, I think I was your very first client inside the office, which was pretty exciting.
It was real exciting. It was exciting for me to be in that office. But Nathan, let me give you a little bit of backstory on how I got there. So is that okay? Okay. So
please.
Yeah. Thanks, Nathan. I had been a realtor and in the real estate business since 1984. I almost hesitate to say that because it seems so long ago. Just like you, a young realtor, got in the business, sold for several years, did fairly well, even though that was in the mid 80s, which, like some of the markets we've been through, it's a crazy time. And in all those years, about 7 years in, I got invited to lead an office. And that was the bite, if you will, the nudge to lead agents, which is what I really love to do. And so fast forward, it's 2011. I have been leading offices, and I have an opportunity due to a tough time in my life, went through a divorce, to switch into something that I had been wanting to do for a long time, and that was to become a coach. And so I joined Keller Williams in 2011 as a coach because they had coaches in offices. And I actually moved to Austin, which is where they all began, and learned from some of the very, very best coaches. But in that year, I became a grandmother, or I was going to become a grandmother, and I had to get home. Dallas is home. So hence, you enter, I become a coach in that office, and that's where it all began. So, and it was very exciting, very exciting. I'm trying to remember, they had more of a mentor before that. Is that right?
Yeah, so there was an agent in the office, Norma Langston. If you're hearing this, love you.
I remember Norma.
She was a productivity coach, mentor, helping a few of us that needed a little hand holding in the very beginning. So, and she was amazing. So, she stepped out of that. Yeah, she stepped out of that role And so it was there was a hole for a short period of time, and opportunity opened itself up, and next thing you know, insert Denise.
Yep. Yep. And yes, I'll never forget when I realized I was going to move back to the Dallas area. I heard from Amber, who was the team leader at the time. I mean, immediately she heard I was coming, and it was a great time. Not only did I think you were my first coaching client in that office, and so you were. I remember you being just like an eager beaver. You were ready to make it happen, and yet there was this side of you that I noticed that was so techie that kept pulling you aside, and you were quite the dreamer, and still are. But that was 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's hard to believe, Nathan, all that's transpired since then.
Oh yeah.
At that time, what I remember is that you were building your business. So what do you remember about that time?
Yeah. So for me, I remember being at, I was at another company for a couple years, came in, and I knew I needed some guidance, right? To get to the next level, I needed some direction. I needed somebody to kind of hold my hand along the way. And through our conversations, and I'll never forget some of our conversations. And I always kind of, I don't know I don't want to say dreaded them, but I always looked forward to that little smile, right? Like that you've got on right now. It's a smile of, oh, what's Nathan going to bring today? What's it going to be like?
It was the truth.
Because I knew for me, for me, it was, I'm definitely a visionary. Like I am a very big visionary, and I see things and how they can work very well. Well, at the same time, that can also be a detriment, to actually production. And so I valued our conversation so much because I'd go in there and I'd have a new idea or a new way of doing things. And you had a great way of anchoring me as my coach to bring it back and say, okay, have you done the most important thing yet? And which is, having conversations with people to go get business. Because a majority of my business at that time was very internet driven. Like it was blogs, it was, Facebook, it was videos, it was all these things. And so helping me anchor back to that, hey, what activities are you doing?
One of the things that I love to do as a coach, and I love doing it then, I love doing it now, is I'm not your typical, in the past, I was not your typical real estate coach. I was trained to be a productivity coach, which meant to, stick to the numbers, which I believe the numbers are the best place to look. However, when you have someone walk in like a Nathan, who's shooting rockets of desire everywhere that you're going, you have to listen to the person. And that's what I loved doing, was coaching to that amazing creativity and then keeping you grounded so you were making money. And some interesting things happened. Do you remember what happened in that year with regards to another business that you created?
Oh, well, yeah. Yeah. So that's actually when through these conversations and coming in and the ups, the downs, the highs, the lows, the tears, whatever, like all of that process, that's whenever actually Amanda and I had started having conversations around developing Agent in a Box. And so the technology company, getting agents up to speed as quickly as possible, was 2012 in that same time frame. And because I knew I loved teaching, because especially doing my business the way it was at the time, a lot of agents would ask me, like, how are you doing this? What's working for you? How are you getting leads on and doing it this way? So I would share it with them. And at that moment, I was like, man, there's a hole in our industry. And so with the help and support of you, with the help and support of Amanda, putting that together. Oh, and Mallory, oh my gosh, she's the one that made me sit down and get these systems that were up here in my head out onto paper. But out of that, came to fruition, Agent in a Box. And within 6
Mhm.
months of opening, we were like coast to coast in real estate offices, which was amazing.
Yeah, that's the thing about you that became very clear to me, was that you were not going to become the, speaking of a box, you were not the agent in the box. You were the agent on the outside of the box, creating the box. You were creating your own box, and which I find quite fun to coach.
Yeah.
Because you could see the possibility. And so.
Well, and I'll add to that, like, and I look at my life today, and we'll continue our story here in a second. I look at like the coaching and the way I coach today, and I go back and reflect on a lot of the conversations that we've had. And that's why I firmly believe that coaching to the entire person is so important, right? If the person, so if you're a broker listening to this, like if you can take one thing away from today, I hope it's this: like an agent, you have to stop, you have to listen to them, and you have to hear their whole story. Because if you only choose to hear the business side of that story, then you're going to miss out. And so like when I'm coaching with my partners and my broker partners and agents, whatever the situation may be, like I keep that in mind. Like I've got to coach to the entire person, not just to the business.
So I want to add on to that, Nathan, because there was a core group of us that there were 4 or 5 of us that I coached. Now I started something in that office that I continued throughout my career as only a real estate coach. I still coach some realtors, but only as a real estate coach. And that was, I wanted to bring them together to mastermind, which is a component that I think is very valuable to agents. And we came together and we started studying books, and one of them was Think and Grow Rich. And I watched all of you have such a bigger awareness of what you could do. And when I think back on those people that were in the room, to your point about coaching to the entire person, there was someone in there who had been through a huge emotional crisis years before she was still carrying around with her. And when I was coaching her, we had to get to that so that she could go on. And she is a rock star agent now. I mean, rock star. There was someone whose kids were leaving home. They were going off to college. That was really affecting her. And now those kids are amazing young adults, and her business is flourishing. There was one, I don't know if you remember, was not the core group. We had one agent who was really wanting to be an agent. She was very young, and she was a nanny during the day. Do you remember she would drag the little boy into the office?
Yes. And
tell him that they were going to the library. And oh my gosh, it was so much fun to watch her and to coach her. I could not coach her like I was coaching you, like I was coaching the ladies who were, in a different stage in their life. So you have to look at the person. Mm-hmm. And by the way, every one of those people I'm talking about went on to create incredible businesses. They're all at the top of their game. So it doesn't matter where you're at. If you have the desire, you can do it.
Well, yeah. And I'm going to take a moment and pause and just, inside that office, just kind of paint a picture. This think tank, this mastermind that Denise is talking about, it was really cool because we'd have this book club, and inside this office, there's this giant, we called it the Fishbowl, right? Because it's this giant room, this conference room with glass walls on 3 sides. Yeah. And so what we would do is we meet in there once a week and we do this book study and have great conversations. Well, of course, through that, like the conversations from people outside looking in going like, hey, what's going on? Like what's going on inside there? And there's just so much synergy that was built inside that room. And it continued to lead to other things along the way. And I know it led to some retreats that we actually did as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So we did an end of the year retreat, which I think happened It was around this time of year. It was either right before Christmas or right after Christmas. And we went to one of the ladies' lake house. So it was very secluded, literally sat on the lake, and we sat outside. I remember it was freezing, but you built a huge bonfire. You were a master bonfire builder. And we sat by the water, and we did some really deep work. And that work launched the next 12 months, which was amazing for you. You went on to do great things, as did the other people that were there. So, and by the way, just for the audience's knowledge, you were the only guy there.
Yeah. That is true. And Mal, love you to death. Like, she was totally supportive of that. So
she was. She's an amazing woman.
Well, and I remember, like, that was definitely one of the defining moments, because I remember, I don't know if it's water, I don't know if it was cold, whatever it was, but I remember sitting out on that dock, and you can probably go back through my Facebook feed, and there's pictures of this.
There is.
The few of us sitting around this campfire but I remember waking up and going out and actually sitting on that dock and just having some coffee, reflecting, journaling, and not only planning out my year, but focusing on myself a little bit. And like, that next year is when some pretty big stuff started happening, and doors really started opening. And if it wasn't for this moment of planning, that I'm not sure I would have been open to moving forward. So thank you for that retreat. It was great. It was great.
It was a great retreat.
So fast forward.
Yes.
Yeah. So fast forward a little bit. Now I'm stepping into a few offices. I'm teaching technology at a higher level and become a team leader in the KW system in 2014. So actually end up relocating from Dallas to Oklahoma City, which
by the way, Nathan, which by the way was part of your goal. So I want to make that really clear, that you set that intention way back in 2012. Not knowing at all how it would happen. So I think that's really amazing that you created the intention and you made it happen.
Yeah. Well, we knew, I mean, family is important to us. Like, it's one of our core values, right? And for us, I knew that being close to not only like family, but my wife's family and everything else, like, it was important to us. And so, my dad lived about an hour and a half away in Dallas, because we were on the total opposite end of the spectrum. So we knew that it was important for our family to make that journey. And so I'm glad that happened, and that door opened in 2014. So then I stepped into that leadership role for a couple of years, and we, I don't want to say we lost touch, but, we stayed in contact and we stayed in communication as I was going through that journey. And then something big happened. Something big happened, and I got I was in part of a training class. A letter came, and and if y'all are familiar with the training I'm talking about, this letter showed up on my doorstep. I opened it, and the realization hit me. Right, I stepped into this role for a reason, and I had just become burned out. Right, I mean, you burn the candle at both ends for too long. Ultimately, there's no more candle to burn, and so of course, who did I call?
Yep. And I remember that conversation. I believe we were doing Zoom. We were Zooming before everybody, the world started Zooming. And we had a Zoom conversation. Right. And I had just started my own coaching business at that time. And so you were one of the first that I was talking about what I do now. And knowing you and being aware of the spark that I had always known about you, I didn't see it. It wasn't there. You remember what I said to you?
I remember that.
You looked.
Oh, yeah. I remember that. Like, I was standing there on Zoom before Zoom was cool. And I remember you looking at me through Zoom, like through a little webcam. And it just hit so hard. It's like, you said, Nathan, like, where's that fire? Like, I don't see that fire, that spark in you anymore. It's like you're like dead inside is what it feels like in this conversation. And that was the moment for me. I was like, okay, like I've got to figure this out. And so you had started doing this journey, and that's when I decided I was like, I need my coach back. And so jumping back into it, you took me through this journey over the next, what was it, 12 weeks, over 3 months?
3 months.
Maybe 4 months.
About
I can't
4
remember.
months. It's about 4 months.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it was this journey to find my fire, right? And you asked me 3 questions. Do you remember what those 3 questions were?
I do. I
What were
do. I
those
love
three
those 3 questions. So first, the question is, what would you love? And it's not just a pat answer that anybody can give. It's a deep, profound question. What would you love in your life? What would you love in your family? What would you love in your home? What would you love in your work? What would you love to be doing? And that one, you really paused on that because you've been on that fast track. And then the next one I asked you was, what if you could?
Mm-hmm.
Once you figured out what you would love, then what if you could? And the last one is, what if it was easy? So Nathan, I'm curious. You took that, you really took that to heart. I think you and I coached for about 6 months in that time period. Mm-hmm. And from the point of where you were to where you took it and where you are now, what do you think was most impactful for you? How do you think you finally made that decision?
Well, that's a great question. Along the journey, every day I would ask myself those questions. I actually, up on my board right here, I have those 3 questions written down, and I stare at them every single day, because I think what hit home for me on that first question and why it took me so long to really figure that out was, like, I didn't know. Like I was frozen, and I was like, I had reached this point in my life that I hit a goal that was a reality. And I'm like, all of a sudden I'm thinking about stepping away from this, like fear sets in, and like uncertainty, anxiety, stress, like all these things started coming up. And I'm like, okay, like eliminate all this and let help me understand, what does it mean to even love, right? Love myself, love what I do. And I'll never forget, I was keeping up with the content and the course that we were going through, and there was a moment where I was like, you know what, I've got to go. And my mind was just so full. I literally went and sat at an IHOP till it was like 3:30 in the morning one day, and just working and contemplating and journaling and taking these exercises. And in that moment, I was like, you know what? I love pouring into people, and I loved impacting, and I like legacy, impact, purpose, authenticity. I'd lost a little bit of myself along the way in this journey, and I'd lost some of my identity, and I had to find that again. And so that was the beginning phases of it. Along the way, as I had, like, it was after that 3 a.m. session at IHOP with that server, I don't know how many pots of coffee that she brought to me. But after that moment, I really started to identify, like, okay, here's what I love. One, I'm loving myself again. But what if I could, and what does that look like? And actually opening myself back up to opportunities and seeing what was going on around me. And if I hadn't have been on a journey like this, then it would have, I think I would have missed the next big milestone that happened in my life. And what was that? Yeah. So, I was at church one day, right? We have these moments where, we go to church or wherever you worship, there's these moments where, someone's up in front of, the congregation, and they're speaking, and all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, wow, that like resonated, see people like, great message, all that kind of stuff. Well, this one really hit home for me. I was there, and I think we'd even had conversations like this, like, I was a walking zombie. I wasn't bringing it for the position that I was in. I wasn't bringing it at home, wasn't bringing it at church. And I had this moment where I walk in, we're late to church, drop Callan off into Sunday school. And next thing I know, I'm in this amazing worship. that I should be experiencing and feeling, and I'm not. And our pastor was in March, actually. Our pastor had started doing this series called The Assist, March Madness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he had just stopped and said, you know what? I'm actually calling an assist today, and I'm having a dear friend of mine actually come in and speak today. So he gets up on stage, and he is amazing, like towel in the back pocket, preacher, just brings it, and very energetic and just passionate. And about 5 minutes in, he has this moment where he looks at our pastor and says, I need to stop, and I need to deviate a little bit from the message. And he starts explaining why. And he's telling about his gifts and the fruits of the Spirit and everything else. And he explains this story, and he starts talking about why he works with big speaking conferences and youth camps and everything else. And he can feel a crowd, and he knows when the message needs to be delivered, or a message needs to be delivered. And in that moment, I'm in the back of the church. I'm like, okay, he has everybody stand up, we all kind of, get into our prayer mode. And well, I'm just going through the motions, and all of a sudden, like divine, whatever it is. And it wasn't just a smack over the forehead type of service. It was a like club Nathan to the ground. And he says, you, sir, in the back are going to start a business this year, and you're going to impact the lives of thousands of people. And I mean, I'm just getting goosebumps thinking about this now, because it was just that moment. And that's what I heard. And I mean, talk about breakdown. And it was a moment in church where, I mean, grown man, ugly cry, and it was happening. And the next day is when I walked in and actually had the conversation with my at the end boss. And I was like, you know what? I don't think this is right for me anymore. And I need to step out. And I don't, not only for myself, but for you, like this position, these agents, everybody here deserves more. And so I removed myself from that position, gave my notice and everything else. And then next thing you know, I'm like, hey, what do I love? I love coaching. I love developing. And dear friend of mine, Mr. Jake Dixon.
Through technology. Yeah. You do it through technology.
Yeah, through technology. And so anyways, long story there, but it leads to this, right? I mean, through journey and asking those questions that I still focus on to this day was super important to me, and it was super impactful to this day. So thank you. Thank you for that.
You are so welcome. Thank you for sharing that. I remember that phone call so well when you told me what happened in church. And as you were talking, Nathan, what I think is so important for anybody to consider is that up until that point, our phone conversations were about what I was coaching you on, which is building a life that you would love. And what was happening was all the drama in your story. And that's what I think, where I think people get stuck. I don't care if they're a real estate agent or a computer geek or a mom at home. Mm-hmm. It's all the drama. And that's where the focus was. And that was where the focus was for you. And it took that searing light bulb moment, the process that we were going through. And then that very moment where you went, wait a minute. It's not about the drama. It's about me. It's always about us. And if it's about our lives, it's always about us. Yeah. And we're the ones who are in charge of it. So sorry, I'm getting a little bit on my soapbox, but I just was hearing that. It's so important for people to know.
It is. And I think it's, for me, what I also realized, and you said it's about me, because it is, ultimately we always, naturally we're human, right? We think about ourselves. Mm-hmm. What I realized in that moment is I had a choice to make. Mm-hmm. And it was about my existence. It was about do I continue to think just about me, or am I going to think, what is my purpose? And I don't think if I had been on that journey with you at that time, I wouldn't have been open to what is my purpose? Like, what am I being called to at a much higher level, right? That impact, legacy, right? Whatever words that you want to use with that. Like, what was that I was being called to? And at that moment, I knew. I didn't know how. I had no idea how it was going to happen. I knew I just had to take a moment and step out in faith that it was going to happen and continue this journey that I was on. And so next thing you know, I'm stepping out. So, so fast forward, let's fast forward again, just a little bit more. And, now I'm in coaching. Like, I started doing the coaching and everything else. And you had also started a journey, right? Mm-hmm. So you'd been going through this journey and identifying for yourself, asking yourself those same 3 questions. So tell me now more, like, Savvy Ageless Goddess, what does that mean?
So, well, that goes back to where you met me, and a couple of years before that, where I went through that transition in my own life from not only a marriage ending, my kids growing up, and changing careers, basically still in real estate, but changing careers. And I had one of those big momentous birthdays where I realized that some people, as they get older, I don't care whether it's 40, 50, 60, 70, whatever it is, those pivotal birthdays, we go, oh my gosh, I'm getting older. And I would see people around me, not just women, but, all kinds of people, when they would hit these momentous birthdays and they would talk about being old. And I declared that was not going to be me. And I started doing some journaling, and I was working with a coach at the time who knew I loved to write, and she encouraged me to start writing. And I said, well, I don't have a blog. What am I going to do? And so I started a group, came up with the name, and the group's name is Savvy Ageless Goddesses. And the whole point of that is to empower women. And actually, since that time, I've thought about changing it to Savvy Ageless Generations and the extraordinaire. There's extraordinaire. So the word is SAGE. My acronym is SAGE. And because it's more about empowering people to not look at the condition of their life, not look at the age, not look at the drama, whatever it is. It's empowering you to live a life that you really love living, no matter where or how old you are. And but I've self-proclaimed me a savvy ageless goddess. So.
Yeah. Well, and I love that. Like, it goes back to everything that we talked about originally, like coaching to the entire person, right? Mm-hmm. And my tagline, I think, has been developed from something like this, where it's be you and be real. Like, if the person's if the person's not right, they can't be real with the rest of the world, right? So that they've got to find themselves to share their story. And so anyways, I love what you're doing. And I hope, if you're a real estate broker or anybody, any leadership, and you're leading people, you're taking some of these notes and you're taking it to heart, like the 3 questions and everything else, because that's you've got to focus on that sometimes to make sure somebody can move forward and help them move forward. So I know you're doing some things, like you've got the Facebook group. So tell us a little bit more.
So what I'm doing now is I'm continuing to take people through the coaching program that you did with me, which is called Dream Builder. And I have extended that. What I learned about that, Nathan, was that 3 months, and we coach 6 months. For some people, it's a year. Some people, it's 2 years. I really think about coaching you for more like 2 or 3 years, because I coached you intermittently through that. Yeah. And it's understanding that there is no quick fix. There's no quick fix, whether you're a broker coaching your agents and throwing at them a training and thinking that they're going to go out there and do it themselves, or if it's about making a life change. And so what I love to do is I love to help people take their gifts, just like I did with you, and integrate those gifts into a dream, into a vision for their lives, so that they are living the life they love. And that's what I do. Mm-hmm. That's what I do. And then the piece that I've added is the intentional piece, because I know from all the studies I've done, including Think and Grow Rich and many, many others, The Power of Intention, There's so many of them that you have to have. You can create a dream, but if you don't have an intention for what you're going to do with that, then it can fall flat. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm doing with my coaching right now. Primarily my clients are real estate agents who are wanting more than just how to sell a house. They really need the life piece. So I coach agents on that. And then I coach anyone, primarily, it seems to be right now, it's primarily women, but I've coached men through this too. It's that any kind of transition where they're facing something in their life, and it can be where they don't even know what they're doing. They just have reached that stuck point, but it's a transition and helping them recalibrate their lives.
Yeah. Yeah. And you do such a good job at that. And so if somebody wanted to find out more about coaching with you, I'm definitely gonna put all this in the show notes and everything as well, but like, where do they go to find out more?
So they can go to my website, which is deniseackerman.com. Real simple. Mm-hmm. And that's Denise with an S and Ackerman. And, or they can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn. I also have, and I'll give it to you, Nathan, to put in the show notes. I am very much about offering what I call a Discover Your Life session. And I've got a link for that I'll give you for the show notes, that they can book a 30-minute session with me and let me see how I can help them find what it is that they would love. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. And I will, like I said, I'll make sure everything, your contact information and stuff is in the show notes so everybody can reach out to you. I highly encourage it. If you're in a moment of transition, if it's you, if it's an agent, if it's somebody in your world and they're going through something like that, Denise is an amazing coach and fully has my endorsement. So
thank you, Nathan.
Denise, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it. Not only for being on the show, but for everything that you've done for me and helping be a great friend, a great coach, a great mentor, and just being there for me and having an ear. So
you are so welcome. And I want to give you some accolades that if any agent that's looking, or broker that's looking to create something bigger, Nathan is your guy, because Nathan has taken from the very beginning of being an agent and done some amazing things, continues to. So you want to coach with vision, and that's what you've got.
Well, thank you so much for that, Denise. I appreciate it. So everybody, we have been talking to Denise Ackerman, the Savvy Ageless Goddess Coach, Transformation Coach, Life Coach, whatever you want to call it. And thank you again, Denise, for being on the show.
You are welcome. Thanks, Nathan.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Broker to Broker Real Estate Podcast. If you like what you heard, make sure you subscribe to the channel. For more information, tools, and resources, go to www.brokertobrokerpodcast.com. And always remember, be you and be real. We'll see you on the next episode.